Welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1300. This is also a celebration of the 5th year of the Cars Yeah podcast. Woohoo! All right.
Opportunity arrives at very strange times.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, automotive enthusiasts. I'm revved up and so excited to introduce today's very special guest, calling in from beautiful Marina del Rey, California, Bruce Kessler. Hey, Bruce, are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
I have a harness on that didn't exist in my days.
Yes. Well, I'll try to keep the car between the rails, as they say today. Bruce Kessler had a short but sweet racing career from 1953 to 1959. It started when he borrowed his mother's XK120 Jag at the young age of 17. He raced all over the world, and Sports Illustrated called him Bruce, daring young Bruce Kessler. He was sent to Lamar in 1957 to drive for Porsche and tested for Centro Sud F1 250S Maserati in Modena. He drove for Scarab, raced Ferraris, and ran at exciting venues including the Cuban Grand Prix, the Nassau Classic, Sebring, Silverstone, Lamar, Watkins Glen, and Riverside, to name just a few. A serious accident ended his racing career, and he landed in Hollywood. And guess what? He became a film and television director. His film, The Sound of Speed, represented the USA at the Cannes Film Festival in 1962, and he won the first Golden Eagle awarded by the American Film Institute. Very, very cool. You can find that film on YouTube, by the way. Just a few of his many other credits included the Monkees, the Flying Nun, Mission Impossible, Marcus Welby MD, and the Rockford Files, to name just a few. All of those shows I watched when I was a kid. How cool is that? So, Bruce, I've told our listeners just a little tiny bit about your incredible past. Would you take a moment to share just a little bit more before I jump into the questions about your career and a very obvious passion for automobiles and racing?
Well, Mark, like all kids, I grew up loving cars and was fortunate enough to be in Southern California in the age of the golden age of hot rods and was fortunate enough, like all kids, to be able to have our version of a custom car or a hot rod, whatever you want, and to grow up with the energy of what's now called engineering, then called hot rodding, which kind of changed the world of the automotive world at that time.
Yeah, you were living in Southern California during a very, very special time. And I want to shout out to our mutual friend, Tim Constantine. He's been a guest here on Cars Yeah. He'll be another guest on Cars Yeah. He just finished an amazing book, The Yanks at Lamar, that we'll be talking about. But we're going to talk about Bruce today, about his incredible past. But as we continue on your journey, Bruce, I always like to ask my guests for a success quote or a mantra. This is some kind of saying that's been instrumental in forming your life and your success. It's a really nice way to get the inspirational tires smoking here on Cars Yeah, because I know you like to go fast. So, Bruce, take the wheel.
Well, outside of saying keep your foot in it, opportunity arrives at very strange times, and in the same in my life. And I came along at the right time, and it was in the right place to be able to do some of the things I did, and to be able to be present in the company of some really great people that changed the way automobiles were built. I was lucky enough to be in that class, so to speak, in the late 80s, when everything changed and when Detroit got the message finally that they had to quit changing the way they were building cars, that there was a new type of car that had come into the picture, and they had to pay attention to these so-called hot rodders out in California.
Yeah, this is really cool. Let's go back a little bit earlier from the 80s. You talk about when opportunity knocks. I mean, when I look back at what you were doing in racing and how you ended up racing all over the world at some absolutely incredible venues, what kind of opportunities knocked on your door that allowed you to jump in the seats of some of these cars and end up at these iconic locations?
Well, to be honest, Mark, at this particular time in racing on the West Coast was just starting. And I was in high school. I actually started in competition when I was 16. But I came from a background of racing. My cousin was in the Northwest, up where you live in Seattle, was a sprint car champion. So I'd been around race cars. And when racing was developing here in Southern California, my mother had a 1953 Jag that was used that my father had bought her. And there was no class for it to run in the drag races. I didn't know what to do with it. And there was a gas station garage on the corner of Santa Monica and Wilshire. It was owned by a gentleman named Pappy Pedigo. And I saw an MG V8 TC. Well, it was a MG TC with a V8 60 Ford engine in it. I thought, well, that was interesting. And I stopped in and talked to him. And I asked him about what I could do with my car. And he said, you can go to the road races. So I brought my mother down when they asked me to have an adult and come down and okay me to race with California Sports Car Club. And she saw gentlemen in suits and ties, and a very nice Englishman named by the name of Ken Miles. And she figured, how bad can this be?
Oh, my gosh. Ken Miles, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a name. Well, little did she know what she was letting you go do. Oh, my gosh. Those guys tricked her with all those coats and ties back in the day. That's just absolutely incredible. Well, my regular listeners know I've had Bert Levy on the show here, and this guy has written all the famous books that he's written, and one of them is Tully's Ghost. And I know, Bruce, you have said that you're aptly described as the smart-ass kid that the fictional characters meet in the beginning of Bert Levy's racing novel, Tully's Ghost. Why would anybody say that about good old Bruce Kessler?
I guess that's the way we appeared. I mean, we were very young when Mercedes decided to give us that car on the condition that I would drive it. It was always their car. It was never Lance's car. We had a matching car. I mean, it was a different time in motor racing. Think that you could ever get away with what we did. We painted the cars identical, and then when they brought the car to the race, it was a different car than we drove on the street. It was quite a different time.
Yeah, no kidding. When Tim Constantine was on the show here, he talks about his agreement with the studios when he was acting that he couldn't be racing. So he'd enter races under false names so that he could go and race on the weekends and have some fun. But it was a lot more loose back then. And I'd love for you to share a story that instigated your personal passion for cars. Is there a pivotal moment in your life when you knew that you were indeed going to be a car guy and you really wanted to be a race car driver?
I think I always was a car guy, and I always thought that racing was one of the only ways I could distinguish myself because I was an asthmatic child. And I thought that because I couldn't do physical sports when I was a small kid and I was around my cousin Gene Wolfen, the sprint car driver, that was something I could do. And that's put me in the direction that took me directly into being a competitive driver, on to winning the Southern California Hill Climb Championship when I was 16 and moving into Formula 3 and winning that championship and then being offered a ride with Ferrari. And I honestly never thought, I kind of thought or hoped that I would get to Europe, but I was fortunate enough. The timing was right. When I took my Formula One test in Modena, Italy, it's Centro Sud Maserati, 250F Formula One Maserati. Today we have probably 4 16-year-olds that have passed their Formula One test and are ready to go Formula One racing. They probably started racing at 6. In organized competition, that didn't exist in my day. My timing was right. It was easy to make a name for myself.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating, incredible, especially compared to today with all the changes. Now, you mentioned Ken Miles. What are some of the other great names that you were racing around back in the day? I mean, there's probably too many to list, but just some of those that listeners would recognize.
Well, they'll probably recognize Carroll Shelby. I was his teammate on several occasions. Roger Ward, who won Indianapolis. Jim Rathman, who won Indianapolis. One of the West Coast drivers that was my favorite, was my mentor growing up, was Bill Pollock, who had won one of the original Pebble Beach races. So, but I raced with everybody. I mean, I was on a team with Hawthorne Collins. I've been on a team with Sterling Moss. I raced on the same racetrack with Juan Manuel Fangio. I raced with all of the great drivers of the mid to late 50s were the drivers that I was lucky enough to compete with or be on the same track with.
My gosh, absolutely amazing. Well, let's talk about some of these many roads you've traveled down. You're a mature man. You've been around for a few years, right? So no doubt you've been faced with some challenges, maybe even a failure or two. And I'd love for you to share one of those that has a great memory for you in the way that it was a wonderful learning experience. I know at the time it probably didn't seem like much fun, but something that taught you something that caused a change in your life perhaps. But more importantly, tell us how that experience helped you gain even more momentum as you move forward in your life, your career, your business.
Involving motor racing, the running of the second Willow Springs race, which was, I'm going to think, in 1954, maybe 1955. I'm driving up towards Lancaster to the Willow Springs track. There was a coffee shop that we stopped at, and there was a small men's room, and I beat an older gentleman to the door and kind of aced him out of getting in there, and had kind of a funny conversation or remarks between us coming out of the men's room where he was waiting. Later that day, I was driving an MGTC with a V860 that belonged to a gentleman named Maurice Carton, who was a professor at UCLA. And I needed something from Worldwide Motors pits, and I went over and borrowed it and came back. And I am told that the gentleman that I had run out, kind of beat into the men's room, had asked who I was. And they told him that I was a young, driver and which car I was driving. And he watched me that day. And then I got an offer from Worldwide Motors to drive for them a car that he was building there, which was a Seattle Spider with an E3 Jupiter. If you remember what those were, E3 Jupiter engine, 1500cc car. And that started me into a series of other rides. But that man was the CEO of a company. My father asked, "Who is this guy you're driving for?" When I asked him what his job was, he said, "I'm the CEO of a company called Kaiser Permanente."
Oh, geez.
Which meant nothing to me, but it meant something in the years to come. That was in the mid-50s.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's the guy you ended up driving for.
Right. And from that led to another ride and another ride and another ride.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I guess fortuitous in a way, but you beating the guy to the bathroom. I'm surprised he hired you. But he must have figured, this guy's quick, so I like that.
Yeah. Well, that's how things happen. And it was strictly, if I hadn't gotten into that situation with him trying to get into the bathroom, he probably would have never noticed me that day.
Oh, my gosh. Isn't that incredible? Well, I know when you think about challenges, you had a very serious accident racing that kind of ended it for you with racing and led you to a whole new career path where you became very successful. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. In the Examiner Grand Prix in 1959, I think it was January of 1959, I was injured driving the Sadler Special, and I had a concussion. FIA wouldn't let me drive for a year, and I was asked during that, shortly after that, when I had no idea what I was going to do except sit out my year, I was asked by MGM Studios, ABC, the network, if I would be interested in being a technical advisor, which I said, why not? And I started my career as a technical advisor, where I became shortly thereafter kind of a writer, script doctor, and shortly after that, what we call a second unit director, which means someone who directs the action in a picture where you can use photo doubles and usually don't use the actors, which led to me becoming a director.
Wow.
On the Monkees, of all things, since I have.
Hey, we're the Monkees. Wow.
Right. I said, I can't even hum.
Well, I'm no good at singing either, so we won't either of us try that. Well, let's have a little bit of fun and talk about your first really special vehicle. Now, this may be the first race car you got in where you said to yourself, man, I've really made it. Or it could be a car that was special to you in your life, and maybe share a memory you have about that ride.
Well, actually, the first car that really came into my life, and is a car that I'd love to own today, was a chopped and channeled 47 Mercury convertible with a Carson top. The car was built by George Barris. Tony Nancy did the interior. It was a beautiful car, just a gorgeous car. And that is a car I would give anything to own today. But I think that my start in motor racing in a real race car that defined my career was Warren Olson picking me to drive the, I guess it was a Mark 9 Cooper, a real race car with open wheels. And that, I think, kind of set me on a path to being a international racing driver.
Yeah. Oh, Mark 9 Cooper. Very, very cool. Love it. Well, and jumping into your first open car and it being a race car, that made it even more special. Open wheel cars. Love those. Fantastic. Is there a car you've owned, Bruce, that you've let go that you really wish you had back in your garage? A seller's remorse story in your life?
I'm thinking about the correct answer may disappoint you.
No, that's okay.
Really.
Not really.
Not really. No, because I always drove other people's cars, and there was no special car that I liked. Yes, I had a very nice Volkswagen that I was fond of, but there were no special cars for me. A car that I really like that I drive today, and this is my third one, and that's an R8 Audi.
Ooh, yeah.
Over a 10-year period, I've had 3 of them. Every time they change transmissions or do something, I trade up. And I think I'm on my last one because it's kind of hard in my 80s to be able to get in and out of the car. But I do enjoy the car.
Those are cool. I love those cars. When they first came out, I was very fortunate. I was at an LMS race at Miller Motorsport Park with a friend of mine, Duncan Dayton. He had a racing team at the time. And Audi brought those cars over to kind of display for people coming to the race as a new car. And they were giving people rides in them. And I was there a few days before the track events opened. And one of the guys let me drive one of those things. And that was cool. Yeah, I just like them because they're so different looking. Every car, a lot of cars all look the same these days. I mean, even supercars sometimes. That probably raised a few eyebrows to listeners out there. But I always thought those were really, really, really cool cars. Let me ask you this. Of all the television shows and films that you worked on, was there one that really stands out for you that you really enjoyed?
I am credited with the McCloud series, and that was a series that I directed 7 of them. 6 of them were Sunday night mystery movies. But I felt that series best suited my sense of humor. It was a show that fit me perfectly. Out of the 40-some-odd series that I have shot, plus the movies I've made, I feel that was the best fit for me.
Very cool. And why was that?
It's a sense of humor, and that the show was written with. It had that. It just kind of fit me.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Well, what are you doing these days, Bruce? I know that you're retired, and I know you hang out with Tim Constantine. You've helped him a bit with this book, this incredible book project that he worked on. But what are you doing these days that has you excited and fired up?
Actually, I've been very active for the last, quite a few years. I'm trying to put it in the proper perspective. In long-range boating, I have developed a boat, or a style of boat, referred to as a trawler, and I have been active in helping educate long-range cruisers. When I say active in educating, it's because I am a circumnavigator and have that background. So I spend 4 or 5 events a year talking about cruising offshore.
Wow. Very, very cool. Well, I know that you have a home out on the West Coast here where you're calling in from, but don't you have a really cool trawler that you and your wife live on out in Florida? Is that right?
Well, we did live out on it for quite a while, but we moved the boat up to Maine, and the boat is in the shed. The name of the boat is Spirit of Zopalote. She is the grandchild of the original Zopalote, which was my boat. The boat is at Southwest Harbor, Maine. That's fairly close to Bar Harbor, Maine. It spends the winter in a big warm shed here, waiting for me to put her back in that cold green water, which we'll be doing in June.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Bruce, up next is the last lap. Before we put the pedal to the metal, let's say thank you to today's Cars Yeah sponsors. Hey, fellow automotive enthusiasts, you know I'm a huge fan of Covercraft. I've protected my vehicles with their products since 1975. That's right, all the way back to my high school days. Want to keep your vehicle's exterior and interior looking new? It's easy with a Covercraft car cover. A car cover is the best way to keep your vehicle looking great for years to come. Car covers protect your paint from fallout, birds, dust, rain, insects, and pollen. It's a fast, easy, and inexpensive way to keep your vehicle looking new. I use my Covercraft car covers every single day. Right now, you can get 10% off all Covercraft custom car covers or their ready-fit car covers. Plus, they offer you over 15 quality fabrics to choose from. Their spring sale is from April 15th through June 16th, 2019. Order direct at covercraft.com and tell them Mark at Cars Yeah sent you. Covercraft is the right choice. Learn more today at covercraft.com. That's covercraft.com. Are you looking for a way to get your products or services into the ears of thousands of automotive enthusiasts around the globe? I can help. This is Mark Green here at Cars Yeah, and I'd be honored to be an influencer and ambassador for your brand in a unique and personal way. 5 days a week, thousands of subscribers and listeners enjoy the Cars Yeah podcast and website. Contact me today and I'll show you how at mark@carsyeah.com or connect with me through the Cars Yeah website at carsyeah.com. Hey, Mark Green here from Cars Yeah. Did you know you can now see me on the Cars Yeah TV show? It's a weekly visit to some of my past Cars Yeah podcast guests, and I take you along for the ride. You go behind the garage door and into their lives, their businesses, and you get to see what makes them successful. With tens of millions of viewers, Cars Yeah TV is making its mark. Cars Yeah TV is available on MAV TV and Lucas Oil Racing TV. You'll find MAV TV on Direct TV, Fubo TV, Fios by Verizon, or you can stream it through Lucas Oil Racing Television online. And they said I only had a face for podcasting. All right, Bruce, I have a very introspective question for you. If you woke up tomorrow and you were a car, you actually were manifested into a car, not what you want to be, but how you perceive yourself, I should say, as a car, what kind of car would Bruce be and why?
Probably be a Model A because I'm old and rickety.
I don't know about the rickety part, but
I would like to be I'd like to be the car I drive.
Yeah, well, maybe a little touch of that in that old Ford, but I like that. That's a nice answer. Well, Bruce, we're entering what I call the last lap. You've been in many of these situations. The white flag's out. Time to put your foot into it. I'm going to fire off a series of questions and ask you to give our listeners quick blips of that Audi R8 throttle. So here we go. What's the best automotive advice you've ever received?
Finish.
Yeah, just finish the race. Yeah, he who finishes wins. Yeah, very nicely done. Would you share one of your personal habits you believe has contributed to your many successes throughout all these years?
Well, I'm a gut instinct person. I feel that way about the profession I was in, directing films. I always followed my gut. But in racing, I developed a philosophy, I'd call it a philosophy, of trying to take command of the race at the opening of the race and break my competitors back the opening lap so they'd quit competing.
I know I was going to say, I like that. And I know that in reading some of your background history, you did just that in some of the races that you started with. You'd run right up the middle or along the side and kind of go, who the hell's that guy?
Well, you have to be to be competitive. You have to be, I'll call it daring, or just have to be competitive. You have to try a little harder and drive a little harder. However, one thing about motor racing, and it's a little bit like high school sports, when you come out of being a football star or something, when you go to high school and you show up for college, there's a lot of people just like you. And you suddenly realize you're going to have to start all over again and work very hard at it. And when you get out of college and you're a star and you think, I'm going to be just fine when I get to the pros, you realize there's a lot of people there just like you, and you're going to have to work a lot harder to make a name for yourself and to survive in that type of competition.
Absolutely. Nicely said. Do you have a resource that you kind of go to these days that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, Tim Constantine. I love
yes.
Tim's writing, his books, and I turn to Tim and I watch Formula One with him. We have a little group that watches it, but he's my major resource.
Yeah, he is a great guy. I really enjoyed having him as a guest several years ago, back in 2015 here on Cars Yeah. And as I mentioned at the beginning, he's come back. We talk about his book. You can go to that show and listen to that here on Cars Yeah. And I got to meet Tim. I'd never met him face to face on the lawn at Pebble a year or so ago when they had all those Oscars on the field. There was this gentleman standing next to this beautiful blue Oscar, and I went up and we were looking at it. And I said, "Oh, this is a beautiful car." And he said, "Yeah, this used to be my car." And I turned and I went, "Tim, it's you." So it was nice to meet him, especially in that environment with his car there. And he told me some wonderful stories of owning that car way back and when. Well, if I could wave my magic wand and arrange for you to sit down and have a drink with anyone in the automotive industry, living or deceased, who would that individual be?
It would be Lance Reventlow, or Reventlow, however you choose to pronounce his name, the man who developed the Scarab and was responsible for it, who probably was laughing when they were having the 50th Scarab reunion at Elkhart Lake, when they were talking about the car and how wonderful it was. And when it was my turn to speak about it, being one of the original drivers, I said just that. Lance is up there laughing because he thought at the end of the 1958 season, the car was obsolete. And of course, it went on for many seasons to be successful and is now, a classic treasured car.
Yeah, those things are beautiful, absolutely beautiful cars. I remember on the lawn at Pebble, a few years back, they had a team transporter with 3 of those Scarabs on it. And of course, I've seen those at events since then. Wonderful cars. In fact, I believe when I was down at Bruce Canepa's shop, we were shooting an episode of Cars Yeah TV, and they had a Scarab in the showroom there as well. So magnificent cars. And Bruce, now was he involved in some way with the movie that you produced?
Yes, he was the driver in The Sound of Speed, and that's why I mentioned the film. It's on YouTube. I believe The Sound of Speed is on YouTube. It has disappeared for years. It belonged to Universal International, and their short film department disintegrated. But you can still see actually what is the first cut of the original movie.
Oh, very, very cool. Now, is there a book out there, Bruce, that you've read that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think if you're a Scarab fan, you must read the Scarab story. But the most fabulous set of books that I have run across in my lifetime covering this sport is Tim Constantine's History of Americans at Lamar. That book is absolutely the most interesting, fabulously researched books, full of quotes and things that you would have never be able to find anywhere else about the history of those of us that have been fortunate enough to drive at Le Mans.
Yes, it's an incredible book. Now, were you involved in helping him with any history in that book?
Yes, from a standpoint of where I was involved. The 2 years that I was there, I was able to give him information that he would not be able to find anywhere else, which he seems to have gone back in history and gotten from every living relative of anybody that was still left besides the original people, that makes the book so unusual and so wonderfully crafted.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll remind our listeners the title of that book, Whites Around the Clock, The Yanks at Le Mans. And again, you could go back and listen to my talk with Tim, where he came back on the show for his second round here on Cars Yeah to talk about that book. Spent 6 years writing that book. I think 26 years researching that book. Books, I should say, because there's 3 of them. It's thousands of pages. Absolutely fantastic. All right, we are up to the checkered flag, Bruce, and this last question can be a bit of a doozy. Today, I'm going to play Santa Claus. I'm going to buy you any cool collector car you'd like to own. But there's a couple rules to this game. One is you can't sell it to buy a bunch of other toys with or a nice big boat. You have to drive it. No garage queens allowed here, but I don't think that's a problem for a driver like you. But the final little catch is it's the only one cool collector car that you can own. So what can I buy you today?
I would like to have my original 1947 Barris green Mercury convertible with a Carson top and a Tony Nancy interior.
Does that car still exist somewhere out there?
I don't know.
In the magic world of cars, yeah, and Mark Green, it does. So I'll go find it for you, and I'll deliver it to you, and you can drive up and down the coast highway in that thing and relive your youth a little bit. That sounds like a pretty cool special car. It'd be cool if we could figure out if it's still out there.
I hope so.
I hope so, too. Bruce, it's been a delight talking to you. You've taken us on a great ride here, and I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to spend with me and the Cars Yeah listeners. And again, a thank you to Tim Constantine for introducing us to each other. That was pretty cool of him. And I want to thank you for sharing your journey. Could you offer us maybe one little parting piece of wisdom or guidance before you drive down the coast highway in that 47 Barris Mercury convertible?
Keep your foot in.
There you go. I love it. Very cool. And are you active out there in social media in any way this day? Is there any way people can kind of keep up with what you're doing in your life? Or are you just out in the seas sailing the high waves?
No, I'm kind of a dinosaur. I barely know how to use the phone, the iPhone. But I am around. I am reachable by almost any means, especially in the world of boating. It's easy to find me. However, in the world of automobiles, people find me all the time, too. So always glad to hear from you.
All right. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you spending this day with me. This is a very special day again for Mark Green here in Cars Yeah, my 1300th episode. I'm very proud that you're my 1300th guest and the 5-year anniversary of the Cars Yeah podcast, which is pretty darn cool. If you told me I'd still be here 5 years from now when I started this, I might have just laughed at you. Bruce, thank you for being so generous with your time and expertise and for sharing your experiences with me and the listeners. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you down the road.
Thanks, Mark.
There we go. You take care of your cars, but who takes care of your investments? Tune-ups aren't just for engines. Updating your financial plan is important too. Your GPS may take you from A to B, but it won't help you on the road to financial freedom. For that, you need a good co-pilot and a very trusted advisor. Chris Kimball, CFP, is just the man for the job. He'll guide you down that road without driving you crazy. For over 25 years, Chris has helped people just like you and me with their financial planning and investments. With a master's degree in financial services, he is eminently qualified, and he's a car guy too. Learn more at chrisvkimball.com or call 866-ON-A-PLAN. Securities through Money Concepts Capital Corp., member FINRA SIPC. CK Financial Services is not affiliated with Money Concepts Capital Corp.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.